people watching this haven't had a good Double Dragon game released in their lifetime. Ain't that a comforting thought? Double Dragon is the progenitor of all beat-em-ups. While there were some that came before it that come close, Double Dragon all the way back in 1987 was the first to put it all together and make a game all about walking and punching. A genre that went on to define the arcades for years until Street Fighter II started muscling in on its turf was started by Double Dragon, and the people in charge made sure to treat the franchise like the legend it was. Nah, they beat that thing like a rented mule. I don't think any franchise has been able to survive off the goodwill of its first few entries like Double Dragon. Say what you want about Sonic, at least they had 3 good games before people started having opinions. Double Dragon has to be one of the most important, yet also most bungled franchises in all of gaming. Double Dragons 1 and 2 are considered classic beat-em-ups, and people will even admit that 2 was fun. But after that, the series just got bogged down in confusing changes in direction, both artistically and gameplay-wise, that completely ruined it. As soon as Double Dragon 3, where the Lee brothers suddenly got really worried about what the Rosetta Stone was up to, you could see that the company behind it, Technos, had no idea what they had. When I think of the great innovations of gaming, I think it's important to remember Double Dragon 3 introducing microtransactions. How else will I know where to throw my rotten vegetables? After that are the 5 or 6 games all claiming to be Double Dragon 4, the TV show in 1993, and the movie in 1994, which are so bad, they're horrible. Double Dragon was riding low on flop after flop. From there, the series transitioned into fighting games, with Double Dragon 5 and Double Dragon 95. But instead of following the tangled web of a story from the last games, these were tie-ins to the cartoon and movie respectively. So in just 5 years, you had Double Dragon 3, which was a sequel to the first 2 games, Super Double Dragon, which rebooted the franchise by going back to the first entry, Double Dragon 5, which followed an entirely different version of Bimmy and Jimmy, and Double Dragon 95, which followed a different version from the last different version. And these are just the original games. If you count ports and remakes done by outside studios, the number balloons out of control. Technos was all too happy to let anybody with a pair of working hands take a crack at Double Dragon, and the results were oftentimes disastrous. The amount of garbage Double Dragon ports to consoles like the ZX Spectrum, the Atari Lynx, and Amiga made the franchise look Bush League, and soon the bad would start to massively outweigh the good. After Technos choked to death on Double Dragon ports, the franchise would bounce around like an unwanted nephew from publisher to publisher. Each one had less and less of a clue of what to do with it than the last one did, before soon dying. Owning Double Dragon did horrible things to your life expectancy. Sir, there's no good way to tell you this news. You're the new rights holder to Double Dragon. By the mid-90s, the franchise was all but completely dead. 2003 marked the last major Double Dragon game, and that was for the Game Boy Advanced. There are worse final resting spots. For nearly a decade, nobody wanted to touch what was a poisoned brand, but around the late 2000s, with beat-em-ups getting a second life thanks to downloadable services like Xbox Live Arcade, Double Dragon got a glimmer of hope. A re-release on those services showed that despite their best efforts, the series still had fans, and they were eager to play more Double Dragon. The answer to that would come years later with Double Dragon Neon in 2012, developed by WayForward. Now, it surprised me to learn while doing research that Neon is actually a fairly divisive game. Some people really love it, but other people really hate it, with review outlets like IGN especially really disliking it. Unfortunately for them, someone always has to be wrong, because Neon is one of my favorite beat-em-ups. While it's got a lot of jank to it, the combat is fun enough to make up for it, and the style pushes it to a whole nother level. No game is quite as happy to be as silly as Neon is, and it makes it hard to hate. Besides, it's WayForward. Those guys always put out something good. Just don't ask them to make a Despicable Me game, the one field they struggle in. Now, of course, this game has to have its own tomfoolery, since it was published by Majesco, a company with the survivability of a cockroach, and all the appeal of one too. Not many people can survive publishing Bomberman Jetters, Drake of the 99 Dragons, and Hulk Hogan's main event, and we're still trying to figure out what Majesco's been drinking that let them do it. Thanks to them, the game barely got any advertising, didn't get any DLC, or a promised patch to add online co-op. Even the game's re-release to Switch didn't add it. While the bright neon lights made the future look bright, they were smashed in and replaced with Double Dragon 2: Wander of the Dragons. God knows what Double Dragon this is the 2 to, but it seems like the 4 or so publishers wanted you to mistake this for the follow-up to Neon. This game had actually been shelved years prior and only got greenlit for a release after the positive reception to Neon from cool dudes like me, not these squares. To say Wander of the Dragons did things wrong that the original Double Dragon from 1987 got right should be impossible. Like, the original Double Dragon did so few things that not getting them all right would be like forgetting how to walk, which they did. Wander of the Dragons may be the most baffling game of the past 10 years. Nothing about it works or makes sense. It flat out punishes you for doing something as simple as a special move, and the general lack of quality undid any good work that Neon had accomplished. From there, the franchise landed with Arc Systems, and I've had a paramedic team waiting for them to drop dead ever since. Even though they own the IP, they haven't exactly been eager to do much with it. They've instead focused their attention on their own original River City Girls games, a great series of beat-em-up RPGs that are fit to burst with Double Dragon references, to stuff as obscure as one-off mini-bosses and Forgotten Player 3 characters. While it was nice that the iconography was getting used, heck, series Damsel Marian even made her playable debut in River City Girls 2, there was still the want from many to play a traditional Double Dragon game. I spoke too soon. Yep, this is Double Dragon 4. That's it, I'm taking away your number line. Appropriately made by just 4 people, Double Dragon 4 is the worst kind of retro revival. Looking back at the quarter-munching, player-hostile games of the past and saying, I'm home! Yeah, it's terrible, and served as a grim omen of what Double Dragon was gonna be going forward, a series stuck in the past that could never quite get past its glory days. That was until this year, when a brand new game was revealed, Double Dragon Gaiden. This would be a brand new entry released by Modus Games and developed by Secret Base. I didn't know anything about Secret Base prior to researching, and considering they're fighting for Google real estate with Secret Bases from Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire, I'd wager none of you know them either. What I found is that Secret Base goes by another name. Raymond. That's right, Secret Base is a team of only 2 developers, with its lead, Raymond Teo, the person who put this entire game together. He was the one who contacted Arc Systems to get the license, talked with Modus to get the game published, all while paying for development out of his own pocket down to the last cent. Raymond and Secret Base, you know, the other guy, Tan Xian Yu, are experienced when it comes to beat-em-ups, making games like Streets of Red, so it seems like the franchise would be in good hands. But if I had $1 for every time I got fooled by a sly-looking dev with a cute smile, I'd probably be able to buy Double Dragon. But I got a few more good years left in me, so let's play this game instead. So, in what's become a series tradition, Gaiden disregards the existence of every other Double Dragon game. Instead, it just picks and chooses what elements to bring from the older games, like the post-apocalyptic setting from, of all places, the movie. Don't worry though, this is one of them funny post-apocalypses, where drinkable water may be in short supply, but there just aren't enough people to fill all the castles. No less than 3 castles in the game. It's the year 1990X, and in a bombed-out New York, 4 gangs are running things, with the ramshackled police force struggling to keep up. That's when the Lee brothers are contacted by the villain from Double Dragon 2. I mean, who is that mysterious man? He comes to the Lee brothers asking for their help to take out the gangs. Their caretaker, Matten, tries to talk them out of it, but the brothers insist on helping, and even drag him and a patched-up Marion into the fight to stop the gangs and restore order to the city. This game's lack of story emphasis is a blessing and a curse, since it keeps things short and sweet, but in a beat-em-up, characterization drives a lot of what I enjoy about it, so it would be nice to see just a little bit more. But on the other side, I'm already playing the game and have to pick a main and secondary character out of our cast of 4. For this playthrough, I picked Jimmy and Marion, and from there you have to pick your first stage. You can take on these bosses in whatever order you want, and they're mostly familiar faces for longtime fans. Machine Gun Willy and Duke return, sporting slick new redesigns. The Okada clan from Double Dragon 4 has a new leader in the form of Lady Okada, as well as the only newcomer boss, Anubis. Out of the lot of them, Lady Okada is the one I chose to fight first, as we're off to the Okada Casino. In the post-apocalypse, before we found a source for water, we made sure to find a way to steal money from each other. From here, it's time for the beat-em-up action to start, and after having played dozens of great beat-em-ups, I think Double Dragon Gaiden might have my favorite combat out of all of them. Shredder's Revenge may be hectic fun, but there's something about how smooth the combat in Gaiden is that puts it over the top. It has a lot more in common with fighting games than traditional beat-em-ups, with a heavy emphasis on combos being tied to rewards, effective meter usage, juggling, wall bounces. They all come together to make something that's mindlessly fun and super engaging. So, every character in the game has the basic combo hits you'd expect from smacking the X button around a bit, but they also have a jump and run button alongside a variant button that does different things depending on the character, and a special move button that changes depending on the direction you hold. This gets used in so many different ways by just these 4 characters. Mr. and Mr. palette swaps, Bimmy and Jimmy Lee, feel totally different to control from one another, with Bimmy way more focused on racking up high combos to earn extra money, while Jimmy focuses mainly on screen control by taking out as many goons as possible. Matin is the character I played as the least throughout the whole game, but he's still a blast, being a heavy-hitting grappler who may struggle with speed, but has the ability to move around while grappling enemies to turn them into projectiles. Speaking of those pesky things, Marion decided the best way to avoid getting kidnapped was to start packing heat. Since she's a cop, she carries around a gun alongside other trinkets like mines and a rocket launcher. She's the best zoner out of the cast, but she's also the queen of lag. Everything she does has such a ridiculous amount of ending lag that it took me a while to realize what a good character she really was. Also, in regards to the design difference between Marion here and in River City Girls, no discussion has ever warranted the answer of "Holy shit, 2 cakes!" more than this one. All 4 also have their own unique special moves, like Bimmy's Hurricane Kick, Jimmy's Uppercut, Matin's Powerbomb, and Marion killing people. These are the most powerful tools in your arsenal, since if you manage to take out 3 or more enemies with a special move, you get a crowd control bonus of a health pickup depending on how many you took out. Just 3 recovers 25 health, 4 is 50, and 5 is basically a full refill for any character. Throwing them out without thinking, though, can get you killed, since the same bar that dictates your special moves also handles your tag-outs. At any point, even mid-combo, you can tag out into your reserve character and let them handle the fighting for a bit. The combo potential is cracked wide open when you start accounting for your ability to tag in your partner, which can lead to all sorts of mix-ups and new combo strings. For my money, there isn't a better combat system in a beat-em-up game. All of this talk about how fun it is to wail on people might distract you from all the people that need to be wailed on, though, so it's probably a good idea to book it to the end of the casino. Fighting past some pretty standard goons, mixed in with gun-toting ones and heavy-hitting damage dealers, we make it to Okada in her office and are ready to battle. Okada is a difficult fight, especially for your first, since that sword is killer up close and from afar thanks to her sword slashes, on top of a tornado trap that can leave you stuck in place. She doesn't have that much health though, so by planning out when you use your super moves, you can take her down and beat the level. After beating a boss, you can earn extra money based on how high a combo you got, how many special KOs you did, and if you did the bonus objectives, ranging from do enough crowd controls to eating a turkey. It was a big turkey! After you clear a stage, you also get the chance to choose an upgrade for each of your characters. They range from attack buffs to temporary shields, or if you value money more than human life, your own included, you can cash out that upgrade point for extra money. This extremely light RPG element makes repeat playthroughs a blast, since you get all sorts of different combinations of upgrades to try out with different characters, learning what works best and what might just be a waste. After we beat Okada, Okada, the rest of the gangs are put on notice and up their defenses for when the Lee brothers get there. What that means is that now, every level from now on is going to be doubled in length, as a whole new section is added on top of it. Now instead of just one boss fight, we get two, and the second is going to be a lot harder than the first. And when you beat the next stage, an even harder third section gets added on with an even harder boss fight. That means every level in the game has 4 variants depending on what order you do them in, and when I found that out, I instantly got so excited to see what happens on my next playthrough when I saved Okada for last. However, we're here to take out the crime problem, not fantasize about bigger and cooler crimes for us to beat up, so we're gonna go to the next level and kick Anubis' stupid helmet off. The arid wastelands of the Bronx Junkyard is the site of our next dust-up, and that increased manpower they were bragging about is already on full display. Enemies in this level are armed to the teeth with new weaponry like dynamite that they will just throw into a group of their friends with zero regard for their well-being. Guys, just parry it, you'll be fine! On top of that, there are loads more goons on screen at once, carrying lots of different weapons, with a nasty section around the midway point where you get trapped in a fight pit and have to plow your way through dozens of grunts coming from every direction. Spacing and area control are super important, so if you ever get overwhelmed, don't be afraid to tag out. Making your way to the end of the stage, and where the fight with Anubis should be, instead are a few of his heaviest thugs coming to greet you. These mini-bosses take the spot the boss would have taken if you fought them first, and can range from a collection of powered-up punks to classic Double Dragon characters like Linda and Bobo. Just because they don't have a name, though, doesn't mean they're not just as dangerous. They might just be 3 mooks, but you're just 1 Double Dragon. Getting sloppy with the mini-bosses is a quick way to lose a character, or even game over entirely. Luckily, I managed to get through with both my characters intact and spent my upgrade money on a buff for Jimmy that gives him more money per combo, and with Marion I got 3 poker chips. Thought they'd be neat to have. On to the second leg of the stage, and now we've entered the pyramid proper. As you can guess, it's dark as heck, with only a spotlight illuminating the way forward. I gotta say, it's nice interior design, but if it had a ton of spikes, I'd like it a lot more. Well, ×3! What do we got here? This level is overflowing with spike traps coming from every which way. Every floor is so hostile, it's likely to take a bigger chunk out of your health than the enemies are. When you gotta try and maneuver around a load of bad guys, it can get frustrating, but when you realize tossing enemies onto them not only hurts them, but counts towards special KOs, I'm suddenly not as upset. Hey, as long as everybody's as poor off as I am, it's not that bad. There's plenty of secret spots to crawl your way into, too, to find stuff like a sarcophagus, and oh, hey, it's the Rosetta Stone! Oh, hey, it's $50! Getting through the last rooms in the pyramid, and you have to scale all the way up to the top in order to get to the fight with Anubis, and it's here you see another benefit of the choose your stage order style. There are some bosses that are better tackled immediately because putting them off long enough means they're just gonna get stronger. Anubis is probably the hardest standard boss fight, having an aggressive and offensive teleport, a long-range thunderbolt strike that can hit from anywhere on screen, and, worst of all, a barrier attack that reverses your controls if you're unlucky enough to get hit with it, which you will be since he uses it whenever you get close. It makes approaching him nearly impossible, which seems like the perfect time for Marion to come in handy, but he can just teleport back in and damage you up close before you can react. It's a real struggle to try to get past him, but I would be lying if I said it wasn't fun to try to figure him out, especially when you realize it's really easy to bait him out. If you catch him right after the teleport or after he uses the barrier, he'll be a sitting duck and free for you to wail on. Although this does introduce another aspect of what makes bosses so hard in how the stage is flooded with mooks. It can get real frustrating to deal with, especially when they flood the screen and start eating attacks for the boss. With a little bit of elbow grease and a can-do attitude, you knock Anubis off his pedestal and clear the stage. A quick health upgrade and some more pocket change later, and we're on to take down Duke. Duke's hiding out in the subways, which means we gotta go underground to get our hands on him. This stage has some really nice transitions, like going from the platform onto the train itself, then tangling with the boss once you get to the front. With the increased enemy waves and the fact that bodies don't disappear until you leave the screen, we get a great chance to see the God, we kill a lot of people. While we are working our way to the front, I just want to mention how satisfying this game is to look at. The sprite art is phenomenal, extremely fluid and detailed, while also taking advantage of modern effects to amplify it. Seeing the screen pulse when you tag out, the after image when doing an enhanced combo, looking at this really makes you realize, wow, Double Dragon 4 sucks. This ain't a retro revival, this is necromancy! The characters all have so much life and personality in everything they do, from their stances, their attacks, their supers, when they get hit, they packed as much character into these guys as they could. That's not even mentioning how beautifully detailed the backgrounds are. Pixel art backgrounds are one of those things that I can see hundreds of times and never stop being impressed, especially in a game like this where the backgrounds are packed with references and colors like the graffiti on the trains. Speaking of that train, those have to stop every now and again, which dumps us out at the train yard. This level introduces plenty of enemy variety, for better and for worse, as the dynamite chuckers are back alongside these new feral enemies that will hop out of the way of attacks, then rush at you with claw attacks. As you go through, the enemies start coming equipped with heavy artillery like bats and sledgehammers, but they make the mistake of not gripping them tighter with their cold dead hands, which means now I have a sledgehammer. The mini-boss seems to have taken this personally and brought their own sledgehammers to counter it. These guys become regular enemies later on, and when they do, they're a real hassle to handle since their attacks are so strong. They can be smacked out of the air if you hit them at the right time, but they have a crazy amount of super armor, so trying to hit them at all is risky. Once you get past them, though, Duke takes off on a moving circus train, which means we've gotta follow along. This might be the most visually impressive level in the game. Seeing all the different thrown together train cars with animals sleeping inside them is great, and it looks even better against the scrolling background. Although, with how much we see this one building, I think the train track might be a circle. This level also has plenty of secrets, like doubling back through the train cars you climb on top of to find extra money, like the elusive gold brick. This level also has a lot more mechanical enemies, like those Boston Dynamics dogs finally getting to live out their dream of killing people. These drones can be a pain to handle if you don't learn, like I didn't for a long time, that you have a different attack depending on if you attack while jumping or while double jumping. Took a confidence-shaking amount of time to learn that. As the level goes on, you get a massive wave of bad guys thrown at you on top of a train car with hazards flying your way in the form of these things I've spent way too much time failing to find the name of. At the end of the car is Duke, who becomes the Fist of the North Star character we all knew he could be. Duke is the toughest fight so far, coming equipped with 2 Robo dogs and a variety of fast, hard-hitting attacks. Duke rarely stays stationary. Almost every one of his attacks launches you across the whole screen, and getting hit with one usually leads to a nasty combo. With everything you have to deal with, it's entirely likely it's too much and you'll end up getting killed. I have 20 bucks. Can I come back to life? Haha! Above your cash total, like a specter, is the revival cost. You can keep coming back as many times as you want to, so long as you have the cash to make it happen. And each time you revive, the cost gets a bit bigger, going up in increments of 500 each time you die. It snowballs fast if you aren't careful, and makes every cash pickup you get mean so much more when it's all that stands between you and death. Now that we're back and better than ever, it only takes a second near-death experience to take Duke out and finish the level. After getting a bitter taste of my own mortality, I gotta get a lot more careful with my purchasing decisions, so I buff my character's survivability and get ready to finish the fight with Machine Gun Willy. The siege on Willy's tower begins outside, with the receptionist being less than helpful, what with sending dozens of armed goons to come and kill us. Now, little lady, I'm only gonna ask 15 more times. Could you open the door, please? Now, this is hardly necessary. Enemies are getting a lot tougher. Now your standard super attack can't even one-shot them. If you're not upgrading them, you're gonna need to soften them up before going for a finisher. Heading forward has us fighting through a lot more of the clawed enemies, as well as heavy fighters who can slam the ground to cause a shockwave. They got a special place in hell saved up for them for how many combos they crib killed with nothing but their girth. Getting inside, and you get a sneak peek of just how vertical this level's gonna get. Hopping into the elevator brings us up to our first boss fight for the level, a Bobo. I don't know what it is about a Bobo, I'm just happy to see him. He's clearly not happy to see us, though, since he hits like a truck. At least I assume. Bobo's giving Marion a run for her money in terms of lag. You can raise a family in the time in between the wind-up and the punch. Of course, every hit he does land does a fifth of your health, so underestimate him at your own peril. Giving his clock a well-deserved cleaning ends out the first leg and gives us a chance to upgrade our characters with reduced charge time for our supers and a few more tokens. I tell you what, when I find out what these things are used for, I'm gonna be so happy for me. The next section starts off fine, throwing rats down a hole. Saturdays are like that, but once we get out this door, we see it. Beat 'em up platforming. I knew it was coming, but I was kinda just hoping they'd forget about it. This genre is already a depth perception nightmare, now try to make them jump in it, it'll be funny. After that are 3 more gauntlets leading up to our next mini-boss fight against these big meaty men. They're like the sledgehammer guys, where we're gonna have to put up with them a lot in the near future, but as bosses, they're already a huge roadblock. Jimmy gets taken out early on, so it's up to Marion to do what she does best and try to camp out a win. Luckily, I have just enough firepower to finish off the job and upgrade my characters for the fight to come. You can tell things are getting scary because they're playing the Mission 1 theme. Double Dragon has some absolutely great songs in its history, and Gaiden does a fantastic job remixing and reworking them. The soundtrack for this game is amazing, with so many classic tracks given the love they deserve, on top of plenty original ones. Even though all 4 stages are loaded up with great songs, man, I want to gush about how stacked Duke's stage is. All 3 songs are from Super Double Dragon, and they've never sounded better. As for the level we're on, though, the song is the exact motivator we need to get through this level. After the initial onslaught of the first room comes a brand new enemy type, dual-wielding Uzis, and they're the toughest of all the standard grunts. They've got the standard volley, but can also go full spray and pray if you're not standing directly in front of them. Luckily, the next section has a convenient hole to toss people down to take the heat off. Past that is the elevator ride up to the boss fight. The boss you choose to fight last will always be the most difficult, not just because of the stacking difficulty, but they'll also have a new element added to their fight. For old Slick Willy, he'll start the fight in this helicopter and fire down at you, and then on the return trip will throw down grenades. You have to punch him out of the helicopter to start the normal fight, but if you try and cheese him by throwing him off the edge of the stage over and over again, he'll just get back in the helicopter and get a chance to set out of range and fire at you. Once he's out of the helicopter, though, he's no slouch, since Machine Gun Willy has a machine gun. Oh, what's next? Knife Dan. If you aren't right up next to him, he can shred your health to bits and leave you open for the grunts around the arena to take a few digs in as well. Your best bet is to juggle him and stop any chance of him firing, but there's only so much you can do to keep him from getting the advantage. He also has a dodge attack where he can throw himself off the roof to get back in the helicopter, so trying to keep him in the center of the stage should be a priority. The fight is long and grueling, but if you pay him off, he might take a dive. We did it, Mr. Mayor! We cleaned up the city and stopped all crime! Now you can install a dictatorship and rule with an iron fist. You're not talking about our New York City, right? Yep, that trustworthy face in shadows was just feeding you a bunch of lies. He had you take out the gangs of New York so he could take over. And now it's your choice on whether or not to take him out and make a truly free NYC, or join him and accept $10,000 in cash. $10,000 is not a lot of money to sell out your beliefs and core values. We'll see you in court, Mr. Mayor. The final level takes us to the mayor's office, and to get to him, we've got to fight through what feels like endless waves of goons. You're going up against the toughest foes in the game, like the meaty men, hammer homies, gun geeks, and pipe perverts. The road to the mayor is a long one. You're gonna need to get through a lot of enemies if you want to reach him, and there are little to no breaks. The level is an endurance run just to attempt to fight the boss. No fewer than 6 gauntlets of the hardest challenges the game has to offer. All of that is made a tiny bit easier when you get to listen to this amazing remix of the final level theme from Double Dragon 2. Seeing the game give you this much money is absolutely bone-chilling. There's no reason the game would ever be this nice to you if it wasn't to cushion the blow of what comes next. After getting through all the grunts, you finally make it to the mayor's office, and who should come back for a second round, but come on, guys! I know we can take him out if we all work together! Ah! This sadistic game wants you to try and take on all 4 bosses at the same time in a single room after fighting the entire population of New York just to get here. And there's no trick, this is not a fake out. The game sits you down and gives you the talk. Negatives, the rest of your life is gonna suck. Positives, there's not gonna be much more of it. If by the grace of God and a Wisconsin amount of cheese you actually kill them all, you get the privilege of fighting the final boss. The ability to heal or get your partner back who just died? What do you think, I'm running a charity here? The final battle starts, and if Gaiden has more in common with a fighting game than a beat-em-up, how appropriate then that the final boss is SNK Brutal. The mayor is completely busted. His entire kit is meant to kill you as fast and as brutally as possible, with psycho crushers, fireballs, massive electric fields, and a punch rush that can shave off almost half your health in just one combo. He's so tough, in fact, I can't do it. I couldn't beat him. He's just too tough. I lost completely and utterly, no more money, and I got a game over. In fact, what you don't realize is that this isn't even the first run at the boss. I tried the boss fight twice in a row, and despite my best efforts, I didn't even come close. Those chips I mentioned before are used to pay for continues, and I had just enough for one more try, and I failed. The game's over. If you want to try again, you gotta play the whole thing over again. That's right, this whole time, you've been playing a roguelike. Well, in all honesty, it's more of a roguelite than a roguelike. See, at the end of every playthrough, win or lose, you'll get to cash out your remaining money as tokens, and those tokens can be used for unlockables on the main menu. You want to know how much this game hates you? The manual is an unlockable. 1 coin for a page of the guide. But not only can you get hints, artwork, and the soundtrack, but also some unlockable characters. Who, you may ask? How about all the sub-bosses? Bobo, Linda, Chin, and Burnov. Okay. What about all the bosses, too? That's right, Machine Gun Willy, Duke, Anubis, and Okada are all unlockable characters, and with it only being fair, they're not fair at all. They do not modify their movesets, they do not weaken them. When you buy a boss character, you get a boss character, and they're a blast to play with. With the few coins I had left over from the last game, I was able to afford Linda and Bobo, and from there, just try again. Yep, you start a new save file and have to go through those 4 levels all over again. This is where the choose your level order and boss level up system really shine, since if you go right in for another playthrough after beating the last one, you're guaranteed to go through a whole new level you've never been to before. For this one, I chose Jimmy and Linda, who is a totally unique character. She has her knife and whip, which means she can't pick up weapons, but she has great reach, high damage, and the best aerials in the game. Also, just try and unlock a character without their description mentioning how they have a family they're fighting for. Linda? Nah, she's looking after a bunch of orphans. Okada? You know her kids. You beat up her kids. Bobo, come on, you've seen his family. They're a bunch of mermaid freaks. That's not all, though. Since the game's gonna be hard no matter what, you can adjust your difficulty depending on what you want. If you're looking to get the word out about how big your dick is, you can set up everything to the highest intensity, but if you have work in the morning, you can bump down stuff like the cost of respawning, enemy stats, the upgrade cost, and turn on infinite continues. The trade-off is that increasing the difficulty increases the exchange rate from money to coins, so you get more when you finish a game, but the easier you make it, the more it's gonna cost to get even a single coin. The give and take system with the difficulty is so cool and makes this such a perfect pick up and play game. Are you looking for a casual breeze through with the fun combat? Absolutely! If you like putting cigarettes out on yourself, this might be a bit healthier. To start out my new playthrough, I decided to do Machine Gun Willy first, to see how different it is, and sure enough, where a Bobo would have been last time, here's Willy, and he's way easier without the helicopter backing him up. That dive kick on Linda can't be overvalued. It's so useful for stringing combos together and canceling out enemies' wake-up attacks, it's just the best. After that was Lady Okada's level, where we get past the office we fought her in previously and go underneath the casino through rock tunnels and up a cliffside to reach the gates of her castle. Not one of my favorite levels in all honesty. The amount of hazards from falling rocks to the danger of falling yourself, mixed with some weird perspective issues, make it a level I'm happy to get through early to not have to deal with. Also, embarrassingly for Okada, I managed to kill her before finishing off one of her grunts, which means that this guy gets the special KO screen. After that is Duke, which we've already seen everything from, which only leaves Anubis left to take out. He casts an evil spell on me that glitched my game out mid-tag and trapped me in this room cause the game counts my tag partner as being off screen so it wouldn't let me leave and I had to restart the entire level. Ooh! Anyway, his third stage sucks. All the room you should have to combo people is instead taken up by spikes that ruin any chance to win the level comfortably. Oh, but these spikes aren't killing and or annoying enough people. Why not electrify them too? At least the boss fight at the end is a lot of fun. Just like how Willy got the helicopter, now Anubis has a brand new spirit form, which powers up his attacks, increases their range, and best of all, makes him a bigger target. After whipping Anubis into shape, we get a much better idea as to why you'd ever chicken out and select the option to side with the mayor. You get a bigger reward for beating him, but you gotta beat him. By cashing out early, you don't get as much money for chips, but you get any money at all? The ending isn't even that bad. It isn't very happy, but they don't treat you like a total wuss for knowing that you're ready to call it quits. Another run through to the mayor's office with a much better upgrade spread and brand new character, and we make it back to the boss rush. Linda's area control and Jimmy's high damaging combos make this phase a bit easier, but don't be surprised if, even after bumping the difficulty down, you have to pay for a continue. After getting past them, you get to fight the final boss again, and after 3 whole playthroughs, losing to this dyed red dick every time, I finally found the winning strategy. Play lame, win games. What? Do you think the game's not gonna want to be my friend anymore after I spam aerials? I'm playing as lame as possible and I still had to use 2 revives before I won. But one I did! Special KO and all! The girly screams as I tried not to blow it all in the sake of pride can still be heard to this day if you listen closely. The mayor has been dethroned, and he warns us that without him, there's no way New York will stay safe. We intend on proving him wrong, though, since Marion and Matten beef up the police force to help keep people safe, and the Lee brothers reopen their dad's dojo to teach people self-defense. The game's technically over, but this is far from your last playthrough. I got 25 coins after my most recent run, which can buy you a few sub-boss characters or one major boss, which I went with and bought Machine Gun Willy. Just like with a Bobo and Linda, he controls completely differently and acts kinda like a souped-up but even slower version of Marion. He hits like a truck and has insanely strong supers, but he has to stop shooting eventually, and when he does, he's a sitting duck. Even though these boss characters are super strong, they never invalidate the base characters. You have just as much of a chance to beat the game with Bimmy and Jimmy as you do with Anubis and Okada. There is one final unlockable character. If you can manage to save up 50 coins, you can unlock the mayor as a playable character. You get to play as the broken final boss and it feels incredible. All of his bullshit moves have been kept intact and are at your disposal. It's the best part of the entire game. The game's only over once you get bored of it, so for now, that's the end of Double Dragon Gaiden. What an absolute blast. Double Dragon Gaiden is one of the most addictive, replayable, and fun beat-em-ups I've played since, well, the last few I played. Between this, Shredder's Revenge, and Battletoads, beat-em-ups have never been in a better spot in the past 30 years. People like Secret Base and Tribute Games have cracked the code for what makes a beat-em-up in the modern day. A genre mostly confined to the dustbins of history is finally back. There are some issues, sure, the Lee brothers lost a high-stakes game of Got Your Nose, and no, online co-op is an actual problem, but given the size of the studio, I'm more than willing to forgive it. Overall, though, if you want proof of how badly I want people to buy this game, I did it twice.